Everybody, welcome to Drive Through Review 476. Today we're going to take a look at Empires, the Age of Discovery. And this is a massive, huge box. Just for reference, here we have the Liberty or Death box. And you can see this is actually a pretty big box by itself, but this one is really, really big. So this is from Eagle Gryphon Games, and seems to be the next in their line of overproduced and over blinged out Euro games. This is actually an old game, I believe about 10 years old now, Age of Empires 3. Same designer, same basic gameplay. I never played the old one, but I think there's some small tweaks here. This one actually includes an expansion, the Builder's expansion. It comes right in the box. You can play with or without it as you like. But the idea is, just like Age of Empires 3, the game, the video game, you are sort of coming across from Europe as different possible European powers at the time and colonizing the new world of the Americas as we know it. So it's a worker placement / area control game at its heart. But it has some interesting sort of ties to the theme and everything. So let's take a look at the gameplay and then I'll tell you what I think of it. Okay, so here's almost everything you get in the game. I can't quite actually fit it all in. The board is a pretty decent size. You can see it's got a map of South America and Mexico, the Caribbean here, and then up into North America over on this side. And what players are really trying to do in this game is have area majority in these different provinces at the end of different scoring rounds. Now, the way that you're going to do that is you're going to do worker placement style actions on all of these different tracks here. And as you can see, there is a massive amount of miniatures, which you don't usually see in a Euro game. And there are various different types. So everybody's going to get a whole bunch in their color. You can see some of these guys have guns and they're carrying little satchels and so on. I'll explain all these in a minute, but there's a whole mass of these here. And players will also get a player board with a different nation here. So you've got Portugal as an example there. You've got the Ottoman Empire. And there's a big empty space here. You'll be able to put all your goods and buildings and things that you acquire in this spot. There's going to be a special ability that you get as a particular nation. So Ottoman Empire's got that. France here has another ability. And a lot of times these abilities are going to be once per age. There's 3 ages in the game, or it might even be once per game. Now, you do not have to play with these. I would recommend playing with them, but I also, maybe for your first game, you don't. I could kind of go either way on that, actually. I will say that these are open to abuse and exploitation. So you got to be aware of the possibilities of how these different special abilities will interact with some of the special abilities of the buildings that you might acquire in the game and so on, because you can set yourself up and do some really cool, nasty stuff. But I think that's really fun. But it's just something you've got to be kind of aware of and know what other players are capable of doing and so on. And you can also see here, he says available workers. Now you're going to get, you can see 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 workers every turn. So you can see you've got your sort of normal colonist here. And the model is the same for all the different colors. And so he's carrying like some logs or some food or something possibly. So you get 5 of these every turn. You're going to be placing these guys out onto different action spaces on the board and then losing them. So basically you play all the workers you get. You might at some point acquire like a missionary figure here. You can see he's got his cross there and his robes. You might get him as well for use on the following turn. You're going to spend all these workers, and then unless you take actions to acquire more of these specialty workers, and there's a few different kinds, you're going to lose them. But you're always going to get a sort of reset of 5 of your normal workers every turn. Now, like I said, there is 3 ages in the game. The game's going to be 8 turns long, and you use one of these cool plastic ships to count as a round tracker. You're going to score at the end of each age. So you're going to have 3 rounds and then scoring, and then 3 more and scoring, and then finally 2 more and a scoring. So before we take a look at the actions that you can do, let's take a look at the map a little bit more closely. So the first thing to note are these discovery tiles. Now each province is going to get seated with these face down discovery tiles. On the other side, you have kind of the Native American strength and will to keep you out of there. And all of these spaces are going to get one except for the Caribbean. So this is going to be open to sort of colonization right from the beginning. To unlock these other territories, you've got to do a discovery action and then sort of has kind of a pseudo combat and then remove that tile. Once that tile's removed, then you're going to start to open up more and more of the board for colonization. So immediately you're going to be able to go right to the Caribbean and then also do exploration and discovery here to open up the board slowly as the game progresses. Now the way that you score in the game is if you have some workers in a particular region. So let's just use the Caribbean right now. Let's say blue's got 2 there, and very simply green has 1. Nothing is going to score at the end of round 3, 6, and 8. One of the characters has to have at least 3 workers in their color, and that means the area is considered colonized. Once that happens, as soon as the 3rd worker comes here, then that player also will be able to steal this trade good here, and you can see the board tells you which one to seed it with. So the Caribbean will always start with sugar. So as soon as the blue player places their 3rd worker there, bam, they take the sugar and they add it to their board. But let's say we're doing a scoring round in this particular case. Blue's in first, green's in second. Blue will get 6 points and green will get 2. So first and second place are always scored. 3rd place and beyond are not. If they're both tied, for example, then they'll both get 2 points in that case. Maybe orange is in here with a worker, they won't score at all, because if there's ever a tie for first, then they each get 2 and nobody else gets nothing. If it was this example here where blue was solely in first, they would again get 6. But then since orange and green are tied for second, in this case with each 1 worker, they get 0. So you've got to have second solely on your own to get those 2 points. So let's take a look at the different actions and things that are going to help you get colonists out here, get the special workers, look at what they do, talk about these special buildings and so forth. Well, during the course of your turn, everybody's going to take turns placing a worker anywhere they want out here on these different boards. So maybe the yellow player puts a guy here, he wants to buy one of these buildings. You might put a folk out here to do a discovery action. You might go here to get more specialists and so on. You kind of put them out however you want. Once everybody's gone around and passed and placed all their workers out, then we're going to resolve them top to bottom and then move on to the next round. So the first spot at the top here that's going to be resolved is this initiative track, and this will actually change the turn order once we're done resolving all of these. But once we start to resolve these, you can see you get a dollar amount, and that particular spot here has a sort of limit in an order that you have to place workers. So the first person to go there has to place on that left-hand spot there. And you can only ever place 1 worker on this initiative track. These other spots you can put as many as you want down in each of the different spots. And so once we start resolving this, let's say it was like this, then the yellow player will get $1, orange will get 2, and then green here will get 3. And I should say the game comes with this cool metal money there. The golds are 5 and the silvers are 1. Very nice money, obviously. So this is going to also reset the turn order to a degree once we get to the bottom, which I'll explain. The next thing you're going to do is go in this colonist spot here. So you will go in here, and you might place guys kind of towards the back as well. And then once we get here to resolve, you're going to take guys off in the order that they're outlined here. So the blue guy will be able to come and send out a colonist here to any explored territory and so on. So you can start to take them out this way. And you can see there's like an X and a Y there. There are some special abilities and buildings and things that allow you to place extra colonists here. But for the most part, you put them out here as you want, and then as we resolve, you go in number order there to place them out on the board. Now, a couple of things here. We showed you the missionary earlier. When the missionary is placed here and then comes out onto the board, they will actually grab another worker and bring that along with them. So when you put a missionary out, it's going to actually you pull another worker out of your general supply here out of one of the piles, and you bring it along with you to the spot, and you've immediately got 1, 2, bam, just like that, out onto the board. Thematically, what you're doing is kind of converting to your religion here, one of the natives. The other type of worker that you might get here is a merchant, and they have a special ability. When you place them from the colony track out onto the board, they're just immediately going to generate you $5. So that's all they do. They're just like a normal worker otherwise, but as soon as they make landfall, you're going to get an extra $5. Now the next thing, you might get one of these builder workers, which I'll talk about how to get these workers in a minute, but you can see he's got the hammer there. When he comes out, he's going to be in a spot, let's say we put him here. We've already got a couple here actually. And what a builder will do is it will increase the value of whatever province they're in for each of the builders there. So that's going to increase it for first and second place. So for each builder, it's going to increase first place by 4 points and second place by 2. Finally, the next type of worker that's going to be of importance to colonize with are these military soldiers here. You can see they've got the little guns. So when they come out here, they're not really going to do anything until you actually execute a warfare action, which I'll show you later, but you need soldiers out here in the colonies to execute that. Now the next spot that's going to resolve are this trade goods spot here. So as players place these out, and then we get to resolve this, you're going to choose in this order that you've placed them which trade good you want to take. So simply yellow might take the cattle, and the blue player might take the indigo, and they're going to just put that on their player board. And of course you can also get these trade goods like I showed you from being the first person to have 3 colonists in a zone. Now what's going to happen at the end of each round, I'll go ahead and talk about it now, is you can see it's on the board here. If you have any 3 goods, so if I just had those 3 goods there, I'm going to generate $1 of income. If I have 3 of a kind, I'll generate $3. If I have 4 of a kind, 4 of the matching, so right now I've got 2 cattle, I can just need 1 more to get 3. If I got a 4th cattle, I would generate $6. And that's going to happen every single round, and that's going to be a very important part of the game actually, to get money to purchase buildings and do other things with. And this will reset every round. It'll be wiped out if there's any there, and then you reset new ones from a bag. Now the next spot here is the merchant shipping. There's always going to be 1 ship available each round, and then players will place workers. It could be as many workers as we want here, 1 at a time. You'll be placing those. You can see a captain, which I haven't showed you, and these are the guys here. They kind of look like soldiers, but this guy has a sort of a seeing eyeglass there, and they have the square bases too. Some of the bases are different to make it easier to tell. So if I had this captain here, he's going to actually count as 2. So right now the yellow player has 3 workers. They got 1, 2 for the captain, and then another one for the soldier. Everybody else doesn't have anything different, but if you did have a merchant, these also count for 2. You can see merchants count as 2. So if the green player had a merchant, it'd be 1, 2, 3, 4. They would have the majority here, and whoever has the majority when we resolve this gets this ship and adds it to their player board. And what this is actually a wild trade good. It can count as any type of trade good when you go to resolve and figure out how much income you get at the end of the round. Now the next spot here are these capital buildings, and there are different ages. So you can see there are age 1s that are in green, and then once we start to move into age 2 and 3, you're going to start to draw buildings from these different stacks. Now the age 3 buildings are a little bit nastier than the others, and they're also going to have a lot of in-game points. So you might get extra points for your trade goods, or the types of workers, or controlling the colonies in different ways. So a lot of your in-game bonuses are going to come out here. Now there is a variance to sort of deal these out and show the initial 10 for the last 2 rounds, and have those face up on the side of the board, so players can kind of know what the end game bonuses are, or you can just kind of draw it randomly and you won't see it until you get to those rounds. Now how do you get the buildings? Well, what you're going to do is you're going to place workers here, obviously, and you're going to buy the buildings in this particular order. And if you can see here, it says age 1 is going to cost $10. Age 2 is going to cost 14. Age 3 is going to cost 20. However, if you have a builder, it's going to be minus $5. So we're in age 1. The yellow player put their captain there for some reason, and they're going to be able to buy one of these buildings for $10. And then blue will get 2 shots at it, and they will be able to buy it for 10 minus 5. So each of these will cost them $5. And these do all kinds of stuff. There's a ton of these, and there's a ton of variety that you're going to get out of them. There's a big old stack over there. And this is really a huge part of the game, getting certain things that are going to sort of combo maybe with your nationality's ability, or ones that'll combo well together. Now this one, for example, you can see is a good example. It's got an infinity symbol. Something's going to happen every round, and it says 1 free soldier in the discovery box each turn, which I'll talk about in a minute. But basically you're going to get a soldier in the discovery box every turn. What else is there? Here we've got +1 builder every turn, and so on. Then some of these are going to be immediate effects here. So this one, for example, is immediately take $20. And then you've got this one here, which if you see there, it's got that little X there. That means you don't actually have to pay for it. You can just take it. And this one is immediately take $5. So there's a couple of those in there, these spoils of war, that you get an immediate sort of cash injection. So you buy those, you put those on your board, and so on, and there's just all kinds of different possibilities there. Next we'll resolve the discovery box, and you might have captains, you might have soldiers, you might for some reason put just regular folks in there. And in turn order, you're going to be able to discover, if you wish, one of the undiscovered colonies. Now you can, in this particular spot, leave your workers here and sort of build up slowly over time, you know, a bigger sort of invasion army, if you will, to conquer one of these different regions. Now you can see again, captains actually count as 2 strength. So this captain here will actually count as 2 workers in this case. In soldiers, we're going to give you a little bit of extra money. Now let's talk about how the discovery actually works. Let's take these 3 folks here. We've got a captain, a merchant who's on the wrong ship, and then a soldier. And we're going to try to, let's say, colonize Brazil. So we're going to send these folks out here. What we're going to do is take a look here at the discovery tile. So I've got 1, 2, 3, 4 strength. We'll flip this over. We can see the strength we need to equal or beat, and this is 3. So we've done that in this case. We're going to keep this tile. We're going to score 5 victory points at the end of the game with it. And we're going to get some money. So we're going to get $2 times the number of soldiers. So we have 1 soldier here. And so we're going to get $2 for him, plus always an additional $1. So in this case, total of $3. Now, if we didn't beat it, let's say we had 5 strength, we didn't have quite enough. Now, regardless, you're going to discard all of these workers back to your pool, but there are some different variants in terms of if you get to a spot and you can't, you know, defeat it. You can either just put it back down without showing anybody, you could leave it face up, you can discard it and draw a new one. I would say play however you want. To me, it's 6 1/2 dozen, and it just changes the metagame up based on, you know, which style you choose. I don't know, really have a favorite, honestly, because I haven't played with all of them yet, but do whatever you want there. Now, if you do defeat it, like I said, you'll keep this, you'll discard everybody that you sent, and then you'll grab a colonist out of your pool and leave just him behind, sort of as sort of initial colonist there. Now, once you've discovered all of the different locations on the board, you can still do the discovery action. You have this deck of cards that you're going to pull from. So what you do is you just draw the top card, and you get possibly some victory points as before, and then some extra money. You just keep the card there at the end. And so some of the different buildings and things will actually combo off, you know, the number of discoveries that you have in your possession as well. Next, we're going to get to the specialist spot. This is very simple. If I had put a worker here in the missionary, when we get to resolve that, then I'm going to grab a missionary out of the supply, and I get to use them for my following turn. You get the missionary, the merchant, the soldier, the captain, the builder, and you can, if you want, go to this spot, pay $5, and they get any of these of your choice. Next, we're going to have the warfare spot. So if you send a worker down here, you can enact different battles. And you can see there's 2 types of battles. There's a battle and there's a war. Now the battles are free, and the wars cost $10, and I'll explain the difference now. Now, if you do a battle, you're going to pick one province, maybe the Caribbean in this case, and you're going to choose one opponent. So maybe yellow chose to battle, and they're going to choose to fight blue. So green's off the hook for right now. And you're going to take a look at the number of soldiers that each side has. So yellow in this case has 2 soldiers there, and then blue has the 1 here. And both sides are going to fire at each other kind of simultaneously. So yellow's going to say, you know what, I'm going to kill off your missionary and your soldier, and blue's going to say, I'm going to kill off one of your soldiers. So these guys will go away, and then that's simply a battle. Now, when you do a war, you're going to just pick an opponent, and you're going to fight them everywhere. So you pay the $10, and then if I said blue, I was a yellow player, we're going to fight here, we're going to fight in Florida, we're going to fight in New France, and so on, and then we're going to wipe each other out in the same manner, like so. And then finally, you're going to reorder the player order based on the track way at the top, where you left your workers up there on the initiative track, and you'll have a new turn order for the following round. And like I said, once you go through the 3 phases, the 3 ages in all 8 rounds, you're going to score points 3 times. You're going to get possibly some extra points for your different buildings. You're going to also get points, like I said, for the discovery tiles and the discovery cards. And remember how I said each round you generate some income from your trade goods. In the last round, instead of money, you're going to generate that many victory points. Oh, and I should have said at the end of each of the different ages, when you score, you can also purchase victory points for various amounts of money as well. Oh, I forgot to mention that on the other side of the map, there is a completely new map, which I haven't played with, because you can see here there's silk, and tea and so on. The game as you get it doesn't come with these new trade goods here. You've got to get that as an extra kind of bonus. So this new map isn't worth anything until you get the expansions. And there's a different rule. I believe the only different rule is you don't actually use the discovery cards once you've discovered all of the lands. That's a little bit different. Okay, so that's Empire's Age of Discovery. What I think of it? Well, I really have regretted not playing this over the last 10 years. It's a game that I've sort of heard about and a lot of people reviewed nicely and talked about nicely on Board Game Geek for a long time, and it's really good. So it has a whole worker placement thing, and then you kind of move all those workers over, and then you're taking area control of the different provinces. I like how that whole thing works out. You've got certain timing aspects of like, where do I go? Do I place at the beginning of the track, the middle of the track, at the start of the track? You know, do I focus more on getting some of these specialty workers like the missionaries and the soldiers and so on? How do I exploit my different special abilities that I have as the nation? And all that good stuff. And it works and it plays very, very simply and smoothly. It is very cutthroat. It can be very, very nasty. You can control that to a degree if you're one of those players that doesn't like, well, there's area control, so you can't get completely away from the nastiness, but you can kind of tweak that just a little bit. I will say that you see a little bit more wars and battles with more players, because with less players, the size of the board doesn't change, but the amount of discoveries that happen does change. So it kind of self-balances in that way. But if you have more players, you're going to have more opportunities to have little battles here and there, and wars and so on. Wars aren't really that common, but you'll definitely see battles. Now you can also tweak the meanness of it by excluding or including the builder expansion buildings. And there's a little icon on the buildings. It's like a little two hammer sort of crossed. You can take all of those out. Those tend to be the more mean buildings in the game. So you can take those out and deal with it that way. But it's going to be very interesting how players react, I think, to the different special abilities of the nations. There is a little bit of loosey-goosiness with those different special abilities. I've had a few times where, you know, there's been some lack of clarity in terms of like, okay, this power interacting with this power and so on. Not to a degree where I think it's really a problem, but because I've gone into Board Game Geek and I've found all the answers to any of the issues that arose for us. But I think it's something you need to keep in mind, and you can be very, very abusive with the power. Now, the most egregious example so far that I've seen, and this player actually did not even win the game, they did make good use of the power, is they were able to have their soldiers act as missionaries. So when they send a soldier out, not only is it a soldier that they're sending that can do battle, but it brings the other worker along with it. And another building comes out, I think it's an H2, that allows missionaries to bring an additional worker, so 2 more workers. And so we had to look that up and say, well, it's not really a missionary, but it's acting as a missionary. And the ruling that I found was, yeah, it can bring in a second or third, in this case, worker along with it. So not only does he have a soldier, but he's got this other. So it's like, wow, those two powers really interact well together. And whereas like the power for Spain, I think it's Spain, they get a free discovery at the beginning of the game and they get a free soldier there. But I wasn't really sure if you get the free colonist and the free soldier or just the free soldier and so on. So, and that power doesn't really seem as good as some of the other powers. Like England's power is you get to reorder the colonist track and then add a couple of free colonists there. Well, that's probably best to just save it for the last turn of the game, but there might be other opportunities where you want to use it as well. Whereas like the soldier ability where you get to bring in the stuff is like, okay, well, that's awesome, you know, all the time. So you've got to really, take a look at those powers and whether or not you want to include them, but also just kind of know, okay, Billy's got the power. We've got to play around that power. It's to the point where I don't really necessarily think it's unbalanced. I mean, it could be wrong. Haven't played it enough, but it's like players have to react accordingly to that. The other interesting power here was the Portugal. I was trying to find that. Once per age, they're allowed to, instead of going to discover a colony, they can go out right to the discovery deck, which is interesting. And then you can get some other buildings like the plague and so on to help you with that. and you're kind of fighting sort of a weakened discovery deck at that point. That was a good ability as well. I don't really think that one's necessarily at least potentially overpowered. I kind of feel like the Ottoman Empire one could be, but like I said, the player didn't win the game, but they got second place, and it definitely was abusable over the course of the game. And that's just something you got to know. It's like when they go to take the soldier action, you've got to go there. You got to get turn order and try to go there, or players kind of collectively have to do that. I think the game works well thematically too, and that's why it really kind of pushes this game into kind of that level of excellent game. You know, you've got different types of workers, which is very interesting. The missionaries do their thing, the soldiers do their thing, and so on. And you've got kind of this loose economy kind of feeling where you're maybe focusing a little bit on the economy, getting goods, getting buildings, and getting more abilities, and also just kind of the process of getting colonists over across the Atlantic over to this area, because that's where your bread and butter is going to be, is you're going to score points with area control, and everything's going to kind of revolve around that. You know, you've got the interaction, I guess you could say, with the Native Americans, which is simply just flip a tile over and then sort of conquer that. So it's, you know, some people might have issue with that. I think it feels like, I guess I have a little bit of an issue with it, or else it wouldn't occur to me. But you know, that is what it is, and that is what happened. You know, all the nations of Europe came over and just wiped out everybody without really asking them if they wanted to be wiped out and have their life completely changed. That's what happened. So that's the historical part of it. There are some cards that, you know, they're sort of, you can make allies with the Indians and stuff like that too, because that did happen a little bit. But yeah, so there's that part of it as well. It's very much a conquest game, and it's kind of interesting to me, I guess, in an intellectual way, where, you know, you've got this worker placement, area control, and that kind of historical kind of mixed in, and it kind of works really well in that regard, where, you know, you're competing in kind of these abstract kind of marketplaces, you know, getting the services of these different specialists and all that kind of stuff. And then your ultimate goal is to go and expand out of your crumbling, you know, decaying continent and find another continent to, you know, to conquer and make part of yours. And so all of that stuff sort of works well together and just the mechanics of the kind of the viciousness of the area control and the worker placement lends itself to that. And I think the game works really well. It's kind of like one of those, you know, I've talked a lot about kind of the nastiness of it. It's one of those games that is kind of like, we were talking about this with my game group, it like predates the whole hybrid idea. If you think of a game like Eclipse or whatever, where it's kind of a Euro, it's kind of an Ameritrash, it's kind of a war feel to it. This kind of has that. It's very much a Euro, worker placement, area control type of thing, but it has that very in your face, you know, take that kind of thing going on, but not to the degree where I think it leaves Euroland. You know, it has all of that very smart, efficient, kind of discrete functionality and actions that you have to sort of exact, you know, and then kind of blends in very nicely with that. So it kind of like sneaks up on you a little bit, like what you're doing, you know, because you're like, okay, I'm going to go here, get some trade goods, get some money, get some buildings, get new workers, and then all of a sudden now we're fighting in each other's face, and they're like, I'm fighting you over here and you over here, and there's like multiple fronts, and everybody's kind of clawing and scratching for this newly discovered land. And that really just kind of comes right out of the mechanics and everything. And I think the game kind of, like I said, is a little bit sneaky that it does such a good job of that. You know, obviously the production quality of this new version is really well, really good. I mean, you have so many cool looking plastic miniatures. I never have any hard time telling them apart. You know, the coins, obviously, everything's kind of nice and thick. The map itself is like a tad ugly for me. Now the actual placement spots where you put your workers, that looks nice. I like how that looks. But the actual provinces on the board, they're a little bit sparse. You know, it's functional. You can tell what's going on. You can tell, you know, where one region begins and another ends. I kind of like to see that gussied up a little bit for some reason. I only mention that because everything else I think looks really well done and put together and very over the top and kind of in keeping with what Eagle Griffin's been doing lately with these Euros. But I recommend the game. Now it's expensive. It's like $100 or more, maybe 125. So you got to know that going into it. But I think the gameplay is at that level. I think it's at the level where it's worth that amount. And I have played it different player counts. It plays nice at the different player counts. I haven't played it with 6. I think that would be way in your face because 5 is definitely more in your face than 3 and 4. Oh, I haven't played it with 2 either. I apologize. Yeah, I don't know about 2-player with this one. I think you want at least 3 because you want the different players in there. But yeah, so is it worth the $100? That's kind of up to you and your wallet. But I think they've put enough into it. The gameplay's, developed and everything enough. You can customize it. You can take out the nasty buildings. You can play without the builder expansions. And you can even play with that, with or without the different powers. There's different variants, for how the discoveries work. And like I said, sometimes I kind of will beat up on a game a little bit for that if they're like, well, did they figure out what the right way was? But in this case, it really feels like it's more of a metagame choice where it's, how do we want the discoveries to resolve and some other things. So I think they've put enough effort and production and polish into it to make it worth the $100, but whether it's worth that to you, of course, is up to you. So that is Empire's Age of Discovery. Definitely take a look at this one and maybe give it a shot first before you spend the money on it, but I would say at least give it a shot because it's really, really well done. And like I said, it's old. It kind of feels old, because it's got worker placement, area control. It's very simple in that regard. There's not a lot of chromy, gussied up mechanics on top of all of this stuff like you see a lot more recently in what you'd call a Euro game. But it's got a lot of other things going on that, things recently have kind of forgotten with games in a way. And we'll probably come back one day. But take a look at it. Thanks.